Ethan never imagined that sharing an apartment with an alien would become normal life. When he first joined the Veskari research station as a human engineer, he expected to be given a compact human-only living zone. But due to a shortage of available quarters, the station assigned him to share a large two-room habitat with a warrior-class Veskari female named Lyra. He was nervous at the beginning, but after a week of silent interactions, they developed an unusual but peaceful routine. She would wake before dawn to train in the loading bay with heavy metal rods, and he would sit on the balcony afterward with his tea, pretending not to watch as she cooled down by breathing slowly, like a machine lowering power. Lyra was tall, strong, and always serious. Her skin had a faint silver tone under the station lights, and her dark hair was braided tightly down her back, never out of place. She spoke only when necessary, usually with short, direct sentences. "You are using too much salt." Or, "The cleaning unit was not powered." Ethan, being polite by nature, always responded with cheerful calmness. "Thank you for your honest feedback." Or, "Duly noted, mighty warrior." She pretended not to understand his humor, but sometimes the corner of her mouth twitched like she was stopping herself from smiling. Over time, they became comfortable in silence. They respected each other's space. Ethan avoided asking personal questions, knowing that Veskari culture guarded privacy like a sacred shield. Still, he was curious. Sometimes he caught her sitting in the dark living room at night, staring quietly at the ceiling as if remembering distant stars. He wondered what haunted her, but he never asked. Instead, he would leave a cup of warm herbal drink on the table near her without a word. She never thanked him aloud, but the cup was always empty later. One morning, the station alarms echoed through the hallways. Ethan dropped his repair tools and checked the display. A meteor swarm was crossing their orbit. Protocol demanded a full lockdown. Every residential block would be sealed for 72 hours until danger passed. No one could leave their assigned quarters. Great, Ethan sighed. Being stuck inside for 3 days wasn't ideal, but he figured it would be easy. He could upgrade his drone projects, maybe watch old Earth movies. He casually walked back into the apartment and found Lyra standing frozen by the control panel. Her posture was stiff, her breathing sharp. For the first time since he met her, her calm expression was gone. She looked unsettled. "Everything okay?" Ethan asked lightly. Lyra turned toward him with piercing golden eyes. "No," Ethan blinked. Usually she would give a full explanation. Instead, she clenched her jaw. "You must stay away from me." He laughed awkwardly. "Well, that might be hard considering we share the same air." "I am serious," she snapped. The force in her voice made him raise his hand slowly, signaling peace. "All right, I hear you," Ethan said softly. "But why?" Lyra looked like she was fighting herself. She grabbed the edge of the table like she needed support. "It is the season." "What season?" Ethan asked innocently. "Mating season," she said bluntly. His brain froze. He did not know where to look. He turned his head toward the window like it suddenly became the most interesting thing in the galaxy.
"Oh, thanks."
Heavy, tense silence. Lyra began pacing back and forth, fists clenched. "I was scheduled to transfer to the isolation barracks, but the lockdown triggered too soon. Now I am trapped. With you." Ethan felt his heart race, not because he was scared of her, but because he didn't want to make her uncomfortable. He forced himself to stay calm. "Okay, so, what do you need from me?" "Distance," she said firmly. "Physical and sensory distance. Do not approach me. Do not speak too closely. Do not look at me for too long. Do not—" "I get it," he cut in gently. "No sudden movements. No emotional pressure. I'll stay respectful." Lyra glared. "This is not a game. My species becomes unstable during the cycle. Instincts override logic. I have greater strength than you. If I lose control—" "I know," Ethan said. "Which is why I'll do everything to keep things controlled." She paused, breathing heavily. Her sharp gaze softened for just a moment. "You are not Veskari. You do not understand the risk." "Maybe not," Ethan admitted, "but I understand what it means to support someone." Lyra did not respond. She simply turned and stormed into her room, closing the door with a loud hiss of the auto-lock. Ethan stood alone in the kitchen. He rubbed his forehead. Well, that escalated quickly. He opened a bottle of cold water and took a long sip, thinking hard. Okay. She needed distance. He could give her that. He could make this work. He spent the first few hours in his own room, building a small barricade of boxes near his door as a joke. He labeled it with a paper note, "Do not cross human safety zone." He hoped it would make her less tense if she saw he was taking things seriously, but with humor. A while later, he left a meal at her door. He didn't knock. He just placed it on the floor, grilled protein strips, vegetables, and cooling gel packs, then quickly returned to his side. The plate remained outside for a whole hour. Then he heard the faint sound of it being dragged inside. He smiled. Night arrived. Ethan could not sleep. He could hear faint movement in the other room. Heavy breathing, sometimes sharp. She was struggling. He wanted to help, but he stayed put. Respect first. The temperature in the apartment rose slightly due to power-saving mode. Ethan switched on the emergency fans, hoping it would help both of them. Then, without thinking too much, he played soft music on low volume. Gentle waves. Wind over grass. Nothing romantic. Just peace. After 10 minutes, he heard footsteps near his door. She didn't enter. She just stood near the barrier and said nothing. He didn't speak either. They simply existed in silence, separated by a line of boxes. Then slowly, the footsteps retreated. The second day was harder. The heat increased further. The lockdown prevented manual temperature adjustment. Ethan poured cold water over towels and hung them in the hallway so the air stayed cooler. He didn't care if it looked silly. Every few hours, he delivered food and hydration packs outside her door. Once, he saw her shadow waiting behind it. She didn't open it. She waited until he stepped back several feet before taking it in. That silent cooperation made him feel strangely proud. By late afternoon, there was a thunderous crash in her room. Something fell. Ethan jumped to his feet. He hesitated. Should he check, or would that invade her space? He approached carefully. "Lyra," he called softly. "Are you all right?" No answer. His heart tightened. He knocked once. "If you can hear me, give me any sound. Just so I know you're conscious." A weak thump. Like a fist against the floor, Ethan reacted fast. He overrode the room lock using maintenance access. The door hissed open. The air was burning hot inside. Lyra lay on the floor, chest heaving, wrapped in her blanket like she was trying to restrain herself. Her face was flushed. Her eyes unfocused. She growled when she sensed him, but it wasn't anger. It was desperation. Ethan knelt beside her, keeping his movements slow. "I'm not here to cross lines. I'm here to cool the place down." He rushed to the vent and forced it open, redirecting airflow. Then he fetched cold packs and placed them gently near her shoulders, not touching her skin directly. He knew physical contact could trigger instincts, so he was careful. Lyra trembled. She opened her eyes slightly. "You should not be here." "Probably not," Ethan admitted. "But leaving you like this would make me the worst roommate in space." She tried to glare but failed. "You will regret, maybe," he whispered. "But right now I'm more worried about you." He sat beside her, not touching but close enough that she knew she wasn't alone. Minutes passed. Her breathing slowly steadied. She stared at the ceiling. Her voice turned quiet. "Why are you not afraid?" Ethan chuckled softly. "I'm terrified. Can't you see me sweating?" She blinked, confused. He continued, "But fear doesn't mean abandoning someone." For a moment, her expression changed. Not soft, not kind, but something deeper. Recognition. She swallowed. "Stay, just do not move closer." "I won't," Ethan said gently. They stayed like that in silence. Two completely different beings sitting on a heated floor, trusting each other without saying it in words. That night, Ethan remained outside her room, sitting against the wall like a quiet guard. He didn't sleep much, but he didn't mind, because something had changed. She had let him in, not physically, but emotionally, and that was far more powerful than anything he expected during a lockdown. The next morning, sunlight crept through the small viewport, casting long silver streaks across the apartment. Ethan stretched, rubbing his eyes, and cautiously glanced toward Lyra's room. The door remained closed, but he could hear her moving softly, the faint shuffle of feet across the floor. She had slept lightly, he realized. That was a good sign. Breakfast passed quietly. Ethan left a tray outside her door again. A carefully prepared meal of protein cubes, fruit gel, and a small thermoregulating drink. This time she didn't wait for him to step away before taking it. She opened the door just enough to slip it inside and then closed it again. The brief contact, the small crack of a door, felt like a bridge forming between them. He smiled softly and gave a tiny thumbs up, which she didn't see, but he imagined she might know. Hours passed slowly. The station was in full lockdown. All work schedules were paused except for essential monitoring. Ethan occupied himself with minor repairs, keeping the apartment as comfortable as possible. The fans hummed, water circulated through cooling packs, and he even cleaned the hallway for better movement. Lyra stayed mostly in her room, but he noticed her pacing had decreased. That meant progress. Later, Ethan was reorganizing a shelf of spare tools when he heard a soft, almost hesitant voice. "Ethan," he froze. It was so quiet he almost didn't hear it. He called softly, "Yes, I would like to sit in the living area," she said. Her words were careful, measured. Ethan's heart raced. This was a huge step. "Of course," he said immediately. "Take your time." She emerged slowly, moving with her usual controlled grace but keeping a safe distance. Her golden eyes scanned the room, noting the barriers and arrangements he had made. Then, as if approving, she seated herself on the far side of the couch. Ethan sat across from her. There was still distance, but the atmosphere had shifted. For a long while, they said nothing. Ethan worked on a small mechanical project, soldering wires and checking connections, careful not to look at her too directly. Lyra simply observed, arms crossed, her eyes tracking his movements with sharp focus. Occasionally, she would tilt her head or lean slightly, and Ethan realized he could almost feel her measuring him, testing his patience, his calm, his ability to respect her space. After an hour, Lyra finally spoke again. "Your species is strange," she said bluntly. "You do not flee from those who frighten you. You do not fight me. You help me." Ethan chuckled softly. "I guess that makes me very strange too." Her lips twitched almost like a smile. "Perhaps most humans would panic or run. Most Veskari males would challenge me without thought. You think before you act." "Good thinking can save lives," Ethan replied. "And it's easy to help someone who trusts you." She narrowed her eyes. "Trust is earned." "That's fair," Ethan said. "I'll keep working on it." The day went on slowly, but a new rhythm emerged. Lyra would occasionally leave her room, always mindful of the space between them. She didn't speak much, but her presence became more natural, less tense. Ethan noticed small changes. Her movements were less rigid. She laughed softly to herself while inspecting a gadget he had repaired. And she even made small adjustments to the living area, moving a fan, fixing a loose panel, without giving orders. By evening, the temperature in the apartment had risen again. Lyra shifted uncomfortably, her breathing quickening slightly. Ethan noticed and immediately prepared cooling packs, fans, and a thermoregulating drink. He approached carefully, announcing each step. "I'm placing this pack on the floor nearby just for air circulation." She inclined her head but didn't resist. The heat, however, triggered an instinctual reaction. She suddenly stiffened, stepping back, and her eyes flashed golden. Ethan froze, hands raised. "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm not going to touch you." She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, it's not you." "It's me," Ethan nodded. "I understand. I'll stay back." Minutes passed. The fan hummed. The packs worked their slow magic, and Lyra finally relaxed. She sank onto the floor, her back to the wall, breathing evenly again. For a moment, she let herself rest completely, something she rarely allowed herself to do. Ethan sat a few feet away, silent, giving her space but remaining present. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For this." "For not panicking." Ethan smiled gently. "You don't have to thank me. I would hope anyone would do the same." Her eyes studied him. "You are not like the others. You see me as a person, not as a season." Ethan tilted his head. "I see you as someone who deserves respect and maybe friendship." Her lips twitched again, more noticeably. "Friendship?" she murmured, almost in disbelief. The night passed with small, careful interactions. They shared meals, passed objects across the room, and occasionally spoke in soft, careful tones. Each word carried weight. Each gesture was measured, but the barrier between them slowly diminished. Ethan discovered that Lyra enjoyed quiet music. The rhythm of her breathing softened when he read aloud from old Earth stories, and she even let him adjust her cooling pack without protest. By the next morning, their routine had developed into a careful shared coexistence. Lyra would sit in the living room for hours, watching Ethan work on small projects, asking occasional questions about human life. She laughed softly at his explanations about Earth customs, though she never admitted how amusing she found them. Ethan, in turn, learned about Veskari traditions, their warrior code, and the strict hierarchy that governed their social and emotional behaviors. The real breakthrough came when Ethan accidentally spilled a small toolkit on the floor. As he bent down to pick it up, Lyra instinctively reached for a heavy rod, preparing to defend herself in case he had moved too quickly. Ethan froze, his hands in the air, and met her golden eyes. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm careful. You don't need to defend yourself." Her posture relaxed slightly, and she set the rod down, though her gaze remained cautious. "You are patient." "I try," he said. "It helps that I want to understand, not control." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded ever so slightly. "Perhaps that is why I am calm with you." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the apartment's rising temperature. He had reached her. Not fully, not entirely, but enough that she allowed him to be near her without fear or aggression. The final hours of the lockdown were tense, but different now. The emotional storm had calmed into a careful mutual understanding. Lyra and Ethan sat side by side on the floor, a respectful distance apart, sharing small tasks, quietly talking and laughing softly. The boundaries remained, but they were no longer rigid walls. Instead, they were gentle markers that allowed closeness without risk. When the alarms finally signaled the end of the lockdown, the apartment doors unlocked with a loud hiss. Freedom returned. Ethan expected Lyra to immediately retreat to her quarters, but she did not. Instead, she stood at the threshold looking at him with those sharp golden eyes softened by newfound trust. "The season is not over," she said softly, her voice measured but calm. "But I am no longer in danger. Because I choose who affects me." Ethan felt his heart nearly leap. He had understood her warnings, respected her boundaries, and yet in her way she was acknowledging him. "So what happens now?" he asked, careful to keep his tone light but steady. She took a small step closer, still cautious, still respectful of space. "Now, and we proceed together. Carefully, respectfully, but together." Ethan nodded, smiling. "Agreed. Rule number 6. Whatever we are now, we face it together." Her lips curved into a subtle, rare smile. Reset protocol denied. For the first time, they stood side by side without tension. The apartment, once filled with fear and instinctual warning, now held quiet understanding. Two very different beings from completely separate worlds had learned to trust, to respect, and to care for each other. And in that shared space, something new began. A bond neither had expected. But both now understood. The experience of the lockdown, of the forced proximity, of Lyra's vulnerability and Ethan's calm support, had created something stronger than instinct, stronger than fear. It had created the beginnings of true companionship, one built on trust, respect, and the unspoken promise to protect each other in any circumstance. Ethan looked at Lyra, her silver-toned skin glowing faintly in the station lights. He realized that he wasn't just her roommate anymore. He was someone she trusted, someone she allowed to exist close to her even when the world and her own instincts demanded separation. And for Lyra, he was the first human she had let inside her personal space without defense, the first being who had faced her strength and her instinctual fears with calm understanding. The station outside hummed with machinery, and life continued as usual for everyone else. But in that small apartment, a new story had begun, a story of patience, trust, and the kind of connection that could survive any season. And both Ethan and Lyra knew silently that this was only the start.